Welcome in, everyone, to the It's Official podcast. Jeremy Plonk here representing First Bet and Express Bet. We're going to recap the week that was, look ahead to Pennsylvania Derby Day on Saturday at Parx. Big day for us Pennsylvania breds out there. Big week, I should say. Friday, Presque Isle Masters in Erie, and then the other side of the state, home of the National League East champion Phillies. We will see the Pennsylvania Derby coming up on Saturday at Parx. We're going to get things started with our first of 5 hot topics, as we do each and every week. The Jeff Siegel Goosebump Award here for this week goes out to a horse we haven't seen in a while, but Bentornato came back from a long layoff from last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint to announce he's going to be a force when the Sprint returns this November at Del Mar.
1-2 off the turn. Skelly wide off the turn, but still in front. Set down for the drive. Bentornato's cut loose, and Bentornato moves up alongside and powers past. They brush briefly there. Skelly's trying to hang tough. Roll on, Big Joe, and hear my song. Bentornato's kicking away from Skelly. This is a dazzling return. Bentornato took it to him and won by 5.
No doubt the performance last week that got you excited out of your chair and the goosebumps on your arm. Big performance from Bentornato, 108 by her speed figure, 108 the key time, 108.43 for the 6 furlongs. Just a smashing performance by 5 1/4 lengths. Jose D'Angelo in the winner's circle interview with Kate and Bradar said the Breeders' Cup Sprint would be next for this one. Now you say just one prep for Bentornato for this Louisville Thoroughbred Society stakes race at Churchill. Really came up like a good grade 2, honestly, for a listed stakes race. But this race, just one prep towards the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Is that enough, you question? Well, it was enough for Midnight Loot when he won his second of 2 sprints back in 2008. And remember last year, Straight No Chaser had just 2 preps on the year going into winning his Breeders' Cup Sprint when they ran 1-2 with Bentornato running second. Bentornato, Straight No Chaser, still in the sprint discussion as we head towards the Breeders' Cup, and Bentornato looks like the real deal. 6 wins from 10 starts now, and he's taken his game everywhere. Remember, he went to Saudi Arabia and ran well in the Saudi Derby, running 3rd there as a 3-year-old last year. And again, last year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, he was just a 3-year-old. It was his first start against 3-year-olds and up in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He had only run against restricted 3-year-olds. So while he doesn't have a big resume since then, he's had a lot of developmental time, and we will see. He looks to be a better horse on the return than when he left, and he was darn good when he left. Bentornato absolutely one to watch to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and no doubt was the horse to watch last week, winning our Goosebump Award. Let's go to our second topic on the big board this week. Is he or ain't he Appleby? Charlie Appleby got another big win in North America last week when the Woodbine Mile went to his favored notable speech. But are his horses running as good as they have in years past in the North American scene? We'll take a look at the numbers, but first let's take a look back at the Woodbine Mile. Notable speech left no doubt late.
Notable speech gets into the clear. The leader, My Boy Prince, in the Woodbine Mile. By a length to gas me up, Wyoming Bill. On the inside, Stanley House. Notable speech, still 4 off. And My Boy Prince and gas me up the top 2. And My Boy Prince is not stopping. Now, Notable speech tearing home. And now we see just how magnificent the closing kick of Notable speech truly is. And action speaks louder than words. Notable speech wins the Rogers Woodbine Mile. 2 lengths to My Boy Prince, gas me up.
Coming out of the Prix-Jacques Marat in France, the top mile race in that country, you knew he had the class edge in here. Notable speech was taking on a weak cast historically for the Woodbine Mile. The South African runner, One Stripe, turned out not to be a star. That was the real X factor. The runner-up, and here a nice horse, My Boy Prince, 6th in this race last year, improved his performance, and he's one who's been knocking on the door in the Japer and the Highlander, the 4-star Dave, but really just can't put him away at a mile against good competition. So My Boy Prince ran his race. In fact, maybe ran the best race of his career in being second best in here. But these aren't major contenders behind Notable Speech that we've been looking at in the Breeders' Cup Mile. But Notable Speech looks like the real goods. He finished 3rd on a late running rallying trip last year at Del Mar. It's not the kind of turf course you want to be coming from the clouds from. So we'll see if Notable Speech in this year's edition of the Breeders' Cup Mile, if he's to get there on November 1st at Del Mar, can stay a little bit closer to the pace. But he's absolutely one of the top milers in the world. Again, that's second in the Marat last time out, beaten by Diego Velazquez. a really nice horse for Aidan O'Brien and company, beaten just ahead in that race. This horse was 5-2 in the Group 1 July Cup at Newmarket prior to that. Notable Speech, an outstanding miler. I think he'll show himself well at Del Mar. But are these Charlie Appleby horses? He had some mixed results on Saturday at Woodbine with his shippers. There's been a little bit of a mixed bag over the past couple of years. Let's take a look inside the numbers here, complement to the BetMix database. Here are Charlie Appleby's North American starters over the last 5 years. We remember going to the bottom of this graphic back in 2021 when he won with 9 of his 18 starters in the U.S., was just punching everybody out at 50%. Then the next year, 8 for 17 at 47%, but it's gone down each year incrementally. This was just his second North American win this year, second from 9 starts. So Charlie Appleby in 2024 really went all in, pushed all the chips in to North American racing with a lot of runners, but he didn't have a lot of success for his level. 24% wins in those races. But you look at the Appleby totals in the Breeders' Cup as well. 2021 won 3 Breeders' Cup races. 2022 won 3 Breeders' Cup races. 23 and 24, 1 Breeders' Cup win each for trainer Charlie Appleby. 23 Group 1 wins, Grade 1 wins in the United States during the 5 years of this graphic. So they are trickling downward, though, and not trending in the direction you would expect from Appleby. Will he have a big Del Mar Breeders' Cup? Last year, again, he got the 1 victory. Maybe the over-under is somewhere around 1.5 for Charlie Appleby. 2 Breeders' Cup wins would be a kind of a trend reverser for him this year. 1 would kind of be on par with what he's looking at. And that 1 win could come in the Breeders' Cup Mile from the horse we just saw, Notable Speech. Interesting on the trajectory of Charlie Appleby's runners for Godolphin here in the U.S. And again, Godolphin and Brad Cox are also having a little bit of a down year. Some of the Brendan Walsh Godolphin horses have run pretty well, but the Godolphin horses haven't had quite the success as some years. But again, they are still at an elite level, winning Grade 1 races here in the North American continent, and doing so last week, the Woodbine Mile, Victor Notable Speech. Again, subpar race for the Woodbine Mile by its standards. Last year's upset winner win for the money didn't come with a big run in the Woodbine Mile this year, so it almost had to be Notable Speech at a very short odds-on price, and he certainly delivered on that. Congratulations to those backing the Woodbine Mile winner, Woodbine Speech, and also those fans and connections of that runner, who, again, one of the top milers in the world. Let's turn to topic 3 now here on the It's Official podcast this week. We're going to look ahead a bit. Pennsylvania Derby coming up on Saturday. Big field in there. None of the runners Grade 1 winners. So it's time to fish or cut bait for Baeza. And that's our third headline this week. Look, I'm not knocking Baeza's record. He's done very little wrong in 7 career starts. His last 6 all in the money finishes. But at 1 for 7 lifetime, he has just a maiden win on the resume, 2nd in the Santa Anita Derby, 3rd in the Kentucky Derby, 3rd in the Belmont, 2nd in the Jim Dandy. All 4 of those losses, 3 to Sovereignty, 1 to Journalism. There is no journalism. There is no sovereignty coming up Saturday in the Pennsylvania Derby. So without those 2 big runners in the field for the Pennsylvania Derby, it should be all about Baeza. He's not a late blooming horse. He was late to the scene in getting to the Triple Crown Chase. He didn't debut in a stakes race because he hadn't broken his maiden. He didn't debut in a stakes race until the Santa Anita Derby, but that was more his doing, right? It took him 3 tries to break his maiden, and when he broke through, it was in mid-February. So he was kind of late to the dance and becoming a Triple Crown noticeable horse to the outside public, but he had been in his form cycle since the 1st of December at Del Mar in his debut last year. Had he won earlier in his career in his first start or his second start, he probably would have been more well-known going into the Triple Crown Series because he would have run through the entire West Coast Series probably, and maybe he would have another win by now, but he was running into Journalism out there, Sovereignty in the Triple Crown and beyond in the Jim Dandy. They passed the Travers Stakes in order to run Saturday in the Pennsylvania Derby. I think that was a very smart move. No sense running with $1 million on the line in the Travers Stakes with the PA Derby looming, and the field for the Pennsylvania Derby lines up this way: a field of 10 Saturday at Parks. It'll be race 14 of 15 on the card for $1 million. You get the 1 1/8 distance. Again, the Travers, you'd had to go 1 1/4 miles and go head-to-head with Sovereignty. To be able to go 1 1/8 miles, then see no Sovereignty, see no Journalism, see no Grade 1 winners in this field really is the smart move. But there are no excuses from this point forward now with Baeza for trainer John Sheriffs, Hector Barrios as West Coast Horse Rider is re-engaged. He rode him to the second-place finish, beating a length last time out in the Jim Dandy behind the champion leader, Sovereignty. Now, as for others in the Pennsylvania Derby, competition comes right next door from Gosger, runner-up in the Preakness, runner-up in the Haskell. He's chased Journalism in the last two. In fact, he got ran down by Journalism in his last two. He was the chasee, not the chaser, and Journalism was able to run him down. Will anybody be able to run down Gosger in here under Luis Saez? He's drawn right next door. Others in here, Big Truz coming off a win in the Ellis Park Derby. Daylight win, kind of a breakout performance for the Brian Lynch trainee. The horse looked to have a lot of potential at Keeneland this spring. Had disappointed me in recent starts, but really put it together last time out. Big Truz certainly one to be considered. Goal-oriented, third in the Haskell, finished his neck behind Gosger. Fourth in the Preakness when he finished about 6 lengths behind Gosger. He's got to turn the table. He's Bob Baffert's kind of last standing 3-year-old in some of these major races. It looks like a dirt mile performance for Citizen Bull could be in line. So if goal-oriented is to represent Baffert in the Breeders' Cup Classic, he's going to have to run a good race here in the Pennsylvania Derby. So you get Baffert, you get Big Truz, you get Baeza. The bees are wild there. Gosger for Brendan Walsh. More bees there. 4 pretty good ones in the Pennsylvania Derby, in addition to Magnitude, coming off a disappointing third in the Travers when he backed up there. Got beat 10 lengths by Bracket Buster for second, 10 lengths by the winner, of course, More Sovereignty. So 20-length defeat in the Travers. It was his second start off the layoff. I thought he would carry his speed farther than he did in the Travers. The cut back to a mile and an eighth, an inside draw probably helps here. We should have a fairly good pace in here. Altabelli coming out of sprint ranks at just cheap speed in here, but he could go a little bit early with Magnitude. David of Athens for Brendan Walsh has a little bit of pace about him. Goal Orient is not going to let him get far away from them. And, of course, Gosger, not necessarily a speed horse, but a horse from the outside under an aggressive rider. Gosger with Luis Saez up is probably going to show a bit more pace in here than some of the other races as well and kind of be up into the mix. Should be a fair pace in here. Again, no excuses for Baeza, who probably in this race sits 4th or 5th early and tries to pick him up down the backstretch and into the far turn. Good addition to the Pennsylvania Derby coming up Saturday at Parks. More important, 3-year-old racing on Saturday, maybe taking a bit away from the Pennsylvania Derby field. We've got a stakes race at Churchill Downs. We've got the St. Louis Derby at Fairmount Park. A quick look at that. The Fairmount Park race, the St. Louis Derby, $250,000 on the line there. Disco Time, the Lecomte winner. We haven't seen that one since back in January when going off the work tab and kind of going radio silent for Brad Cox and not making the Triple Crown. Interesting comeback spot, a winnable race at a mile and a 16th. It'll be great to see Disco Time back in action, and a big effort from Disco Time this weekend. Maybe a Breeders' Cup dirt mile kind of horse. We'll see. A son of Not this time. Hypnos also in that race, coming off a third in the Smarty Jones at Parks. Ellis Park Derby, third place finisher. Admiral Dennis in the St. Louis Derby. He chased Big Truz last time out. Those are the main players in the big race at Fairmount Park for the year, the St. Louis Derby. As for the race at Churchill Downs for the 3-year-olds, it's called the Bourbon Flight Stakes. $300,000, a mile and 3/16. This race run at the distance that we see the Preakness Stakes run at each year. And in this field, you get Chunk of Gold in there, the West Virginia Derby winner last time out. Second in the Ohio Derby. Of course, he ran 9th in this year's Kentucky Derby after a second-place finish in Louisiana in the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby at Fairgrounds. So Chunk of Gold, the well-known 3-year-old, a horse that you might have expected to see in the Pennsylvania Derby, but with $300,000 in the backyard, Ethan West able to take this one from the Turfway Park base, van down to Churchill Downs and run for $300,000. He should be pretty tough out in that one. Hypnos again, also, and Admiral Dennis both entered in the race in the St. Louis Derby. Cross entered there at Churchill Downs. So the 3-year-olds in the spotlight one last time probably for the season for a lot of those running an exclusive 3-year-old company. We still have the Oklahoma Derby coming up a week from this weekend, so in 2 weeks' time. And then it's pretty much on to the Breeders' Cup for those type runners. If they want to stay in the 3-year-old ranks, they'll have a chance to go to the Malibu 7 Furlongs Grade 1 the day after Christmas at Santa Anita. So probably not in the cards for a lot of these 3-year-olds. Last call this weekend and next. between the races with the St. Louis Derby, the Bourbon Flight, the Pennsylvania Derby, and then next week's Oklahoma Derby. And that'll kind of wrap up the 3-year-old scene. But it's all been about journalism and sovereignty this year in the 3-year-old ranks. And nothing that happens this weekend is going to change that. But a big win by Baeza could be a statement towards the Breeders' Cup that he's one to at least consider in there as the 3-year-olds take on the older horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic. If Baeza runs a big race, he's on to the Breeders' Cup Classic almost assuredly. If he doesn't run well, this might be one that they don't press on to the Breeders' Cup. John Shirreff's a rather conservative trainer by nature. So I think it's a telltale fish or cut bait weekend for Baeza. We'll find out where he stands in the division and where he stands in terms of a Breeders' Cup prospect. Let's go to our fourth topic this week on the It's Official podcast. We're talking the early Derby for the early Kentucky Derby leader. After the first points race was run last week, the Iroquois Stakes at Churchill Downs. First 10 points going to the winner of that race towards next year's Kentucky Derby. Churchill Downs, of course, hosting this race, the Iroquois Stakes. Grade 3 company, 1-turn mile. It was a rematch of the Ellis Park Juvenile. Comport won that by 2 lengths that day. The runner-up was able to come back in this race, Spice Runner, and turn the table. Steve Asmussen's got the leader in the clubhouse, if you will, for next year's Kentucky Derby. On points, at least. Let's go back and take a look at the stretch run of the Iroquois.
About Spice Runner is green, still trying to get back on track, and it's getting on track now, and it's coming after Comport. Here comes Spice Runner and Comport. Photo finish. Nose is on the wire. Spice Runner might have got the bob there, but it's tight. Comport farther back. Vost.
We joke a little bit about the Kentucky Derby points chase. Steve Asmussen, in an interview with Byron King in the winner's circle afterwards, said he had the Kentucky Derby points leader with a laugh and a chuckle. And this horse, Spice Runner, a really well-bred horse, no question about that, by Gun Runner, but he's a full brother to Gunite. And Gunite, of course, a top-notch sprinter, second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, won the Hopeful, won the Forego at Saratoga, sprinting around 1 turn. This was a 1-turn mile for Spice Runner. They got the last quarter in 25.76, so didn't exactly fly home in this race. The visuals don't really tell you that the horse wants to go super long, and of course, the 1.25 miles in the spring, too far off to even project about that. The more short-term deal is, do we think Spice Runner can step up and run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? He's not going to come back and run at Keeneland on short rest in the Breeders' Futurity. If we see him again in 2025, Spice Runner most likely would be a horse for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, or stay at Churchill Downs and go towards the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes on Thanksgiving weekend. We'll see what Steve Asmussen wants to do with this full brother to Gunite. The Dam Side is a turf sprint mare. There's not a lot here telling you that this horse is going to come back and run long down the line. So if the Iroquois winner here has any impact on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I'll be surprised. I don't think Spice Runner is a 2-turn horse to go against the best in this division right now on the stretch out. And when you look at the top 2-year-olds in this division, of course, Brant and Desert Gate have been running 1 turn in Southern California, but they look exceptionally talented for Bob Baffert. Ewing, Obliteration, Ted Nafi, Time to Dream, all horses that really kind of caught the eye at Saratoga this summer. We'll see how they stretch out in their final preps towards the Breeders' Cup. Those Saratoga horses, it looks like Brant and Desert Gate, they may just train up to the Breeders' Cup for Baffert. We'll see if they come back and run in something like the American Pharaoh around 2 turns at Santa Anita. But the top of this 2-year-old division looks really strong. The Iroquois winner does get 10 points and takes the lead towards the Kentucky Derby chase, but I don't think he's really in the hunt to be a Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner. Spice Runner, though, congratulations to the winner and the early Derby leader in terms of the points chase. I think 52 races in the U.S. towards the Breeders' or towards next year's Kentucky Derby, still with which to qualify for points. That's one top 2-year-old of the past weekend. Let's go to our stars of tomorrow and talk about another one here. This is a horse for Chad Brown, a $900,000 Tappet filly, second-time starter named Memorize. She's a half-sister to Zandon, who earned more than $2.2 million on the dirt. This one on the turf. Check out Memorized.
Memorize his work towards the outside. No room yet for Sweet Little Lila, trying to rally on for John Velasquez towards the inside. 5 of them across the course here in the opener. Memorize is getting in a touch, but Memorize now slingshots to the lead. It's Memorize in front. Alibi starts to roll. Sweet Little Lila as well. Memorize, Flavien Pratt, they got the jump. They're inside the final 16th. Sweet Little Lila's making up ground, but running out of time. Memorize wins the opener. Sweet Little Lila second, then came
You think with all the pedigree and being the half to Zandon that maybe she would go to the dirt, but her dirt debut didn't show much. It was much better on the turf for Memorized. Of course, Zandon, her brother, won the Bluegrass Stakes, third in the Kentucky Derby and Travers. But again, she really took to the turf, as a lot of Tappet fillies do. Memorized, one to keep your eyes on. I don't know about Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. If there's a race to get her there in between, maybe she could show up at Keeneland next up and see her in the Jessamine Stakes. That wouldn't be a race that would be out of the question. So we'll keep an eye on Memorized moving forward. And maybe she's just a 2-year-old filly now who will kind of wait for the winter and see where things may shake out as she works towards a grass career. So Memorized, really nice. Second start winner again by Tappet, a half-sister to Zandon. She is our star of tomorrow. Let's review the 5 topics this week on It's Official. We started things off with the Jeff Siegel Goosebump Award this week. Went to Bentornato in the Louisville Breeders' Society, winning in 108.43 for the 6 furlongs, earning a 108 Beyer speed figure. On to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, where he was second a year ago. Izzy or Annie Appleby? The percentages show that Charlie Appleby's horses in North America haven't been as strong in recent years as they were in the past. It felt that way. The numbers bear that out. But take no knock on the performance by Notable Speech last week in winning the Woodbine Mile with relative ease in the stretch. Really finished up strong. It was never in doubt in that one. Subpar edition of the Woodbine Mile, though, so we'll see how last year's Breeders' Cup Mile third-place finisher comes back. Don't be surprised to see Notable Speech again during the Keeneland meet. Appleby not afraid to run him. I would expect that we'll see this horse at Keeneland prepping towards the Breeders' Cup with another start. Fisher Cut Bait by Baeza. It's time to win one of these big races, the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby on Saturday. This is a race that Baeza by all means should win. Should be a favorable pace setup. And horses in the competition in there include Gosger and a couple others that have some talent, magnitude, but they haven't had the performances that Baeza has had in the Triple Crown series. He's definitely the horse who has shown the most class of that group. He should be headed towards the winner's circle. If not, we're going to have to kind of regroup and rethink maybe a Breeders' Cup Classic bid. The early Derby leader, we talked about the Iroquois Stakes winner getting 10 points to the 2026 Kentucky Derby. That being the full brother to Gunite named Spice Runner for Steve Asmussen. He was able to turn the tables on the horse who beat him last time out, Comport, in the Ellis Park Juvenile. All about Spice Runner winning the Iroquois. And our star of tomorrow, the Chad Brown Turf Filly. Does that sound familiar? Chad Brown trained turf filly, Memorized, $900,000 Tappet, and the half-sister to the Chad Brown trainee, Zandon. She was impressive in her second start in our first try on the turf. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I say so. That's the way we play the game, and we'll re-rack it and do it all again in a week's time. Between now and then, hope everybody has a great week. Please send your thoughts and prayers to our good friend Jeff Siegel. He certainly needs them now, and let's support him as he goes through some medical difficulties. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, have a great week, everyone. And again, partner, we're thinking about you. Have a great week.